Well, greetings, everyone that's tuned in right now. We are glad to have you here. We are about to have an awesome conversation, that's for starters, and we are excited to do so. I just want to make sure that you guys can hear us and see us okay. So as you come into the broadcast, can you do us a favor and just say hello? Let us know that you can hear us. Let us know that you can see us. We want to make sure that everything goes well with today's conversation. Let me make sure that we are live everywhere, and then we'll get started, sir.
And I'm here too. I'm sharing, brother. I'm sharing right now. I'm focused.
Right.
I know you're trying to get me to do a mic check here, but I'm like focused, Talaat. I'm trying to get it going, man. You know what I mean? I'm sharing this out there.
All
man.
right. So we got people saying that they can hear us. That is awesome. You can hear us and you can see us. Is that correct, everybody? All right. I'm getting people checking in that they can hear us and they can see us. I just want to share this out. And as we're sharing, could you do us a favor, everybody, and hit the share button, because it's a conversation that needs to be had, and we want to help. That's the goal today. We want to help.
Boom. I'm done.
All right, same.
All right, man.
All right.
Dude, what are you doing, man? What a crazy world we're living in here.
This is historic. 2020 has been historic for so many reasons.
Yeah. And I told Jocelyn the other day, I said, I'm pretty sure more has happened in the last 6 months than the first 42 years of my life. Wow. And it's been wild, dude. It's been wild.
Your wife is checking in the comments. She said your wife was supposed to share, but she got distracted. Sidetracked by kids and food. Mom life. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are in a year for the history books, no pun intended, but this is some stuff that we'll be talking about in the history books for generations to come. I mean, everything that has encompassed this first 6 months of 2020. But why are we here and right now is the question. My friend here, Shane, this is Shane Sams from Flipped Lifestyle. And those of you that are here from his platform, my name is Talaat McNeely. I'm one half of His and Her Money. And so we are here today, live. No script, no
plan.
No, we're just gonna have a conversation.
We're gonna talk, man.
We're gonna have a real, transparent conversation, because we want to be a blueprint and a model for what needs to happen in everybody's little world. Everybody has a part to play in understanding. Everybody has a part to play in healing. Everybody has a part to play in moving forward. And so we want it to be a blueprint of how that should go. And I got to say, my hat's off to my brother Shane here, because this was his idea. So let's start there, Shane.
Okay.
You had an idea a few days ago. Talk about
That's
where
right.
that idea came from.
Yeah, man. Like everybody else, we've watched over the last couple weeks in awe and horror and everything. When we saw what happened in Minnesota, we've watched what's happened in our cities all over the country, but it really has sparked a really important conversation, in America that we've got to have, and we're going to have to deal with it eventually, one way or the other. And so it's really sparked that conversation. And like a lot of people who have a platform, who have some influence, our podcast listeners, our members, our community was reaching out to us and saying things like, "Hey, man, are you going to make a statement? Are you going to write something? Where do you stand on this? We don't want anybody being quiet about this. Like, what's going to happen? You've got some influence. How are you going to wield that influence right now?" And I saw at the same time, man, I saw other people like me, 40, 50, 60-year-old white guys making these big soliloquies on Facebook and writing these big statements down. And some of them were good and some of them were bad. And some of them were selfish and some of them were in tune with what was happening. And I was like, man, I don't think that that's the right way I want to handle this, And I love conversation, man. I love conversation. I think conversation and listening and talking is where people really solve problems. And I said, this is how I want to answer this. Before I make a statement, I want to find someone that I can have a conversation with. And I started thinking about, everybody I know, and your name popped right into my head because it's hilarious how different our lives have been, but how similar our stories are. We're husbands, we're fathers, we're people we're entrepreneurs, we're helping people. But, you grew up in Chicago and I grew up in the hills of Southeast Kentucky. And I was like, man, that's the person. That's the person I know that can bring wisdom and help me understand what's going on. And we can talk to each other and I can explain to him what I think's going on. And I knew it would be a good place that we could have a grace-filled conversation and really talk about this stuff, man, because it's wild. It's wild right now on social media, dude.
Yeah. So you hit me at the right time because I had to take about like a 36-hour just unplugged break after the news broke. And we'll get into, everything about feelings and all that. But it was just a lot. It was the tipping point, a personal tipping point. There was a whole lot going on in my world. There was a whole lot going on in the world. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that news story, I was like, I got to take a time out. This is all of this stuff is getting to me to the point that I need a timeout. And it was coming out of that you hit me like, hey, we need to talk about this stuff. And I just hit you back like, let's do it. Okay. I was ready at that point. So
and then we talked like 15 minutes and we're like, let's not go too deep here. Let's just let it be raw. Yeah. Let's just let it be real, and like that way people can actually have those conversations. Because I do think there's on one side, you got people being silent. On one side, you got people silencing. Yeah. And on both sides, that's happening in both places. And we need to make sure that everything's on the table, no holds barred, nothing held back. And so we can just talk about stuff, man. So
yeah, and believe it or not, I've the same sentiments that you've been getting, I've been getting from other friends that are not African American, like reaching out personally, and to be totally transparent, because this whole conversation is going to be transparent. It was this situation, even though this is not the first situation like this of someone African American losing their life at the hands of a police officer that's not African American. This was the first time that I got all these messages like, hey, I saw what happened and that's not cool. I saw what happened and it's wrong. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to handle this. I don't want to say the wrong thing. So it was new to me to get that type of feedback. And so when you hit me, I was like, man, this is a thing. Like there clearly needs to be a conversation held, and clearly people are willing to have the conversation now. So we're here to have the conversation.
Dude, well, let's start it off. So me and Talaat, we've been texting back and forth a little bit, just random thoughts and things like that. And I think the coolest place, the place where we decided to start this thing was kind of like who we are and where we grew up. I think that matters so much to how you view the world, is where were you born? And that's a crapshoot. None of us get to choose the family or the place or where we were born. God puts us where he puts us and he says go, right? So so tell me about you and where you grew up and like how your life was like in your younger years.
Yeah, so I grew up kind of in two places. So I went to the military at 17 years old. So from half of my childhood, the first half was in the city of Chicago, south side of Chicago. And then the second half of my childhood was right out on the outskirts of Chicago in the suburbs. And so I've had both experiences, and they both came with their own set of challenges. So from ages 0 to 8, we were on the south side of Chicago, and then from 8 to 17, we were in the suburbs. When we moved to the suburbs, we were one of only a couple of African American families in the neighborhood. And that presented its own set of challenges. I know one of the things we wanted to talk about was my first experience knowingly with racism.
Sure.
And so that happened not too long, maybe a couple of years after we moved to the suburbs, into a white suburb.
So before you moved out there, did you just live in a black neighborhood? You had
south side of Chicago, high rise building, lived on the 17th floor, complete African American community, complete.
What was your experience then like with white people then, or with people of other races? Because before you moved to the suburbs. You know what I mean?
The only memory I have of someone interaction with someone white was at my mom's job. She had a good friend, and when she would take me to work, I would see white people there. But as far as in my neighborhood, no. At my schools, no. At my daycare, no. Family functions, no. It was just a total African American context to my knowledge. My church, completely African American context. Just a complete African American urban typical situation.
And then, like, what happened? So you moved to the suburbs, right? What happened there? Like, did you feel an immediate difference? Did you learn it over time? And then, like, what was that first experience where you're like, whoa, people who don't look like me sometimes may not like me. Like, what's going on with this, right?
Yeah. So at that age, the world is just full of flowers.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't come into the new setting with the thought that I was different. But I had a real rude awakening. So there was something that happened subtly that I didn't recognize because of my youth, and there was something blatant that it don't matter what age you are, you recognized it. So the blatant thing was a cross being burned across the street from my house.
Get out of here! You serious?
100%. And this is
how old were you when that happened?
I'm somewhere between 10 and 12. I was asking my mom that, and she was trying to remember. It was early 90s. It was pre-high school. So it was like middle school time frame. So like really early 90s. I had been in school, and we had, Black History Month and all that type of stuff. So I knew what a cross burning. Like, it wasn't my first time seeing a cross burning. It was my first time seeing a cross burning in real life. In real time.
Yeah.
So, parents had to have conversations about that, and it was burned. It wasn't burned in my house, in my yard, but it was burned. There was another African American family across the street. We was only like less than a handful of our families in the neighborhood, and it was burned in their yard.
Wow.
And so, yeah, as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, I see a cross burning. This is
right.
Not. I thought that only happened in the 60s, Mom. I thought that was
something that
happened in the
show.
30s. But you're saying that here in the 90s, and we're not in the South, Mom. We're up north. You're saying that's happening here. So yeah, that was my first experience. As far as
but you didn't get it then. You didn't comprehend it really.
Oh, I got that. Yes, that was bad.
Yeah. I got you.
What I didn't comprehend, the subtle thing that happened was the term is white flight. So one by one, as soon as we moved out there, our Caucasian neighbors began to move away. So probably, let's see, I was in third grade when we moved out there, and everybody was gone by the time I graduated 8th grade.
And did African American people move in?
Yep.
Is that like they just kind of changed? The whole neighborhood kind of changed.
Flipped and became a complete African American neighborhood. Yep. So I didn't recognize that at that age. I just thought, hey man, it's weird. The new friends that I made, they keep moving away.
And you did, and you were just thinking they were moving, but no, the whole world was changing basically on you.
Yeah. So experienced that. That's something that I recognized later on as what took place. But in the moment, I was just like, man, that's messed up. Everybody's moving.
Wow, that's unreal.
Those
dude.
are the first experiences that come to mind.
Yeah, dude. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but I grew up in the opposite world that you did. Like I grew up in a small town in the mountains of southeast Kentucky, and like it was 100% white. There were no African Americans in my life for the first 20 years of my life. Like I just didn't know anyone else, other than literally seeing people on TV. I didn't know there were people that were different than me, right? Everybody around me was white. And it's funny, I was so ignorant. I was in like 5th or 6th grade, and a kid moved in. He became one of my great friends in high school and in middle school. And he was from Pakistan. But we didn't know. We thought he was black. We had no clue. I mean, we were just so clueless and ignorant. We just had no idea. It was just somebody that had darker skin than us, right? And I swear for the first 3 months I'm getting to know that guy, I didn't know it. I just thought, oh, sweet, man, I got a black friend. This is cool. And no. He was like, no, man, I'm from somewhere else. And it was funny because living in a place like that, like so homogenous, you really don't have to confront it or think about it or deal with it, even though you hear about the history of the racism in your area, or you hear about what's happening in other places. You really don't have to. You don't have to confront it. You don't have to deal with it. And I remember distinctly the first couple instances of racism in my life where I realized that like that was a real thing that affected people. I had a subtle experience too. My dad grew up, he was a kid of the Depression, right? Born right in the 40s, right after the Depression. And he lived out in the sticks. I'm talking no running water, a farm, had outhouses until a certain time when they finally got electricity. He always tells me about killing hogs, and they had to kill their own food and stuff. So this is literal rural Kentucky living. And he lived in a place, and it's not named this anymore. And remember, this is back in the 50s, y'all. I'm talking about here, so don't be saying this is going on now. This place out in the county was called the N-word Creek, but they didn't say the N-word. They said the N-word. That's what it was called, right? And it was actually a physical place until probably the 70s. It was called that until they changed the name, right? And so he lived out there, and the reason it was called that is because there was some kind of incident in the history of our area where all of the African American people who were here left. It was just gone, right? But there were a few families still left, and they lived out there at that place, and that's how that place got that name. And my dad and a handful of rural white farmers lived out there too. And I remember hearing them call that place that. That's what it was called in this area. But it never really registered to me until I got a little older, and I was like, ooh, that's a bad word. You shouldn't say that word, right? And I've talked to him about that before. And I was like, man, how did you come out of a place called that and not be racist? Like, how is that even possible, right? Because my dad is totally the opposite of racist. Like and he told me the story growing up. He said, man, you got to remember, we lived out there with them, and we didn't know we were white and black. We just knew we were all broke. He said we were just all poor. So like we helped each other, and we connected with each other, and we were struggling to survive. We didn't have time to get mad at each other because of the color of our skin. And then when my dad got to be a young man, he used to drive from southeast Kentucky to Chicago, up near Gary, Indiana, and all that area. Mm-hmm. And he used to work with African Americans in the steel mills. So he had this experience of working with other people. And on top of that, he was a Baptist minister, and he believed that, God made everybody the way they were made. And that's the way it was. So I was very fortunate to have the upbringing that I did that taught me this, that we were all equal and we shouldn't, But I have other influences. Like my whole town, my whole area at the time, it's changed a lot since then, was still lily white. And I remember the first experience I had with a true racist incident was we were playing another football team. I was in like 8th grade, and they were from around Lexington, and they were all black. Everybody on the team was black. I mean, it looked like Remember the Titans when we were playing a game. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it was an African-American team versus a white team. And I remember this game was intense. It was emotional. We were going at it, getting after it in the trenches, and it was really, really competitive. And we lost a heartbreaker. And at first I was like, oh man, we lost, And then I remember right after the game, a guy on my team at the top of his lungs just screaming across the field, I hate you N-words. I hate you N-words. I'm gonna kill me an effing N-word. Like I remember this like it's seared in my brain, dude. Like this mentality, man. And his dad was standing beside him, and I remember his dad not doing anything about it. And that was the really first time that I realized it's not just that we're different colors. Like people actually hate each other. You know what I'm saying? And I remember talking to my dad in the car that night, and and it was really hard. I don't think he knew what to say. He just basically said he shouldn't have used that word. That's not right. You know what I mean? But I do remember that distinctly, man. That was my first experience with like true racism. Like, and even though it didn't affect me, and even though it was really someone saying that to somebody else, it kind of startled me, And, but that's kind of the context I bring to the discussion. I didn't meet my first black friend until I was a sophomore in college. And it was two guys from Louisville, Kentucky that joined my flag football team. And I was the middle linebacker and they were right and left, and we played 7-on-7. And we lifted weights and we had a great time. Their names were Cole and Demetrius, and they were awesome, just really good dudes. But man, I mean, that's how I grew up, man,
Wow. That's all I can say is wow, to think that you said like all the way up until the 70s, that title was there on that creek.
Dude, and listen, they changed it from the N-word Creek to Negro Creek. They didn't really get it right until about the mid-90s. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
And it was, but it's a rural place. Like it's almost like nobody would even think about it until somebody brought it up. It's a holler out in the sticks. So, but they did eventually change it. It's got a normal name now, and everything's kosher. They got rid of that back a while back.
What do you think was different with this current situation, the George Floyd death? What have you heard? What did you experience differently? Because this wasn't the first death. This has been documented now for a long time, but on like people videotaping and people having access to the information for a good 10 years. We've had incident after incident after incident, but for some reason, this struck a chord in the nation a little bit differently from your vantage point. Because the emotion that I had when I first saw it was not again, right? For me personally, not another one. So for where you sit, what was different this time? What was the dagger for you in this situation?
I was sitting on my couch and I watched the video, right? And like everybody that watches that video, like, Jesus Christ, that dude is straight killing that guy, right, on camera. And I remember looking over at Jocelyn and I said, "Have you seen this?" And like it's been really hard, man, this year, because like our kids have been through, all of our children have been through so much confusion with this pandemic, and they walk in, and they see horrific scenes like this, and it's like one thing after another. So I think that with all that's happened this year, with the lockdowns, with the quarantine, that was seasoning this moment, right? And then the way that it happened, there's been incidents in the past, where police have shot black people, right? And like, that's horrific. But when you see someone choke the life out of someone, and then the visual, I was a history teacher for 10 years before I became an entrepreneur. So I taught this stuff. I taught Black History Month. I taught the Civil Rights. I taught the Civil War. And when you see the visual of a white person with his boot and knee on a black person's neck, right? That's different, man. That is a different kind of image. And I don't think that anyone can look at that without, when you hear about someone getting shot and then you don't really, even if you see the video and someone falls down, you don't really see that. But man, we saw that for 8 minutes from different angles. And I think that plus everything that's been going on, does this happen without coronavirus? I don't know if this moment happens without the coronavirus pandemic, but it did. And it was seasoned, and everyone has been home, and everyone's been pent up. And now 40, 50 years of thinking about this since the 60s, and then that happens in that way. And then just the widespread nature of it. Like sometimes these things happen, like these protest movements. And I remember when Black Lives Matter became a hashtag and became a big thing. And sometimes they happen, but you feel really, really removed from it, right? Like me and Jocelyn, we did a live event, dude, back in like 2015, I think. It was when Freddie Gray got killed in Baltimore, okay? And I remember Black Lives Matter protests were happening like in Chicago. But maybe it was 2016. I can't remember the exact year, but we were in Chicago when this was going down, basically. And because we had a live event. We had a mastermind there. I had 20 people that had bought tickets, and we showed up and we went to this thing, and we rented a room, like I think it was on Michigan Avenue, in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden we hear something, right? Like we hear a noise, and we look out the window, and there was a Black Lives Matter march going right down Michigan Avenue. And it was big, and and it was making, they were talking about what had happened, and they were making their voice heard, but it was just like they walked by and then they were gone, And then you watch the news that night, and and they had zoomed in on the crowd, and it looked like there was 50,000 people in the streets, and there was this real media disconnect, and like we were literally above the thing, and they made it look like it was bigger, but this one was not. This one literally was in 40, 50 cities overnight. It was just everywhere, and you couldn't hide from it. And I think that's probably why it kind of took off. You've got all this emotion this year. You've got this horrible, visceral image, that has context to it. And then you have real, huge protests that you can't get away from, And I know it's been a conversation everywhere, man.
Yeah, I think on this side of the aisle, like I said, the first response I had was not again, because this wasn't, and it was 2 incidents in one day. It could have easily been 2 deaths. We had Mr. Cooper in New York as well. He was bird watching, and the lady called the police with a false statement about what he was doing, that he was under attack, and it could have easily been him taken out as well. And it's not even the first incident this year. And right before we were dealing with this, we were feeling the pressure and the anxiety around Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. And probably 2 weeks before that, we had Breonna Taylor, who was murdered. So it was like month to month to month, like 3 months in a row, we had situations like this. And the thing for us is we feel it because we see ourselves in the image.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We see each individual on the screen. Hold on, my computer's. We see George Floyd on the screen, but we also see ourselves. We also see our uncle. We also see our dad. We also see our grandfather, our cousin. We see Ahmaud Arbery running through Georgia, and I run through my neighborhood. So I see myself in that confrontation. We see Breonna Taylor, who was at home, just at home.
Yeah, that was in Louisville, right? That was in Louisville.
And she catches 8 bullets. And we see our fellow. So it's an experience by which we are looking in the mirror. And so that's why my reaction was not another person. And that's why the weight of it feels so heavy, is because we're not just looking at the person that lost their life, but it brings up trauma from our past. Because I personally have been face down in the pavement without committing a crime, with police officers and their weapons drawn on me and my friends, because we fit a description of something that was going on in the neighborhood. And we were just driving after a high school football game. So I'm a teenager, face down, terrified. No, this is before phones. This is before camera phones, right?
Yeah.
So in those days, this stuff was still happening, but there was no video footage. And so it was always a situation of your word versus their word. And over time, it builds a despondency. It builds a discouragement, because I'm 6'3", and I've been over 6 feet since high school. So I have, quote unquote, fit the description for a very long time. And so I have been the victim of this stuff personally. So that's why when I see these things, I am reliving everything that I personally have been through in the moment, knowing that I was one ticked off police officer away from being amongst this number.
Yeah.
It could have easily gone the wrong way against me, even though I did not commit any crime. But I was looked at as a possible perpetrator of something. To this day, I don't know what. But we fit some type of description.
How'd that end? How did that end? How did they let you go?
They searched the vehicle. Happened? They searched us. They questioned us to see, I guess, if our stories lined up, matched up, and we were just let go by the grace of God, because that's not everybody's story. Like I said, this is not new historically. At least from, let's call it the video age. Let's call it the cell phone camera age, right? We have a good 10 years of this stuff documented. George Floyd is not the first person to pass away on camera. We saw Philando Castile live live, not even a after the fact video. He was murdered live on social media with his fiance and his daughter in the back seat, fully complicit with the instructions of the police officer. He was
in the car still. He was in the car.
What the police officer told him to do, getting his identification, and he's gone. So it's not a matter of, and I guess maybe that's, one of the many problems with the situation of our country. Well, that's one of the things that's being uncovered that still is a big problem in this country, is that we don't want to admit that racism is alive. We're comfortable with saying that there are racist people. You won't have a problem with people saying, yes, this world has racists, because if you say that there are racist people, there's no ownership for you, right? But because it's a person, it's a people, it's some bad apples. But if you admit that racism still exists, you're admitting that there is a problem in the system. And if there's a problem in the system, then there needs to be accountability to fix a broke system.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a couple questions about that, because I've been when I started telling people that we were going to talk, most people were like, "You're going to what? You guys are going to do what?" They were like, "Yeah, man, we're going to get online and talk, man, because if you don't talk, we can't figure it out, And but it was funny because I was asking people like, well, if you were a white guy and you had a chance to ask a black guy some questions, and you were a black guy and you had a chance to ask a white guy some questions, like, what would you do? What would you say? Right. And so I got a lot of like interesting things about that. So I got a personal anecdote that's it's hard to explain how white the way I grew up is. Right. And it was almost like, it's interesting what humans do to each other, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like the humans are not cool to each other sometimes for a lot of different. It's like we look for reasons not to be cool to each other sometimes. As many times as we look to help each other, as many times as we look to take care of each other. And so as I was growing up, there was no class warfare. There was nothing to separate you from anyone else, right? And I remember when you posted that thing about running, when you were running the 2 minutes, and you said that really impacted me, dude. When you showed that picture of you and you're like, I fit the profile, like I fit the profile. When you were growing up, you fit the profile. That really hit me hard. Like when I saw you post that, and then there was other conversations around that moment about the talk with the kids, like. Having a talk with your kids, telling them how they should react with police and things like that. And like, it's so funny because, and I'm not trying to make an equivalency here. I'm just trying to tell you an experience. Okay. Like in my area, I remember similar talks with my dad when I was coming into like getting ready to drive and things like that, like what to do with police, because we were not like rich. You know what I'm saying? And we didn't drive the fanciest, best cars. And like that was kind of the separation of who got treated bad, who got pulled over. You know what I'm saying? In our area was, you wouldn't see the nice car, driving down the street get pulled over. You'd see the poor guy living out in the county. You know what I mean? And it's weird because I can relate a little bit experientially. I'm not trying to make an equivalency. And if anybody's chatting about that, I'm not trying to do that. But what I'm saying is like the viewpoint, the vantage point is like black, white, but it's also there's like, poverty, wealth, and there's some other underlying factors in all of these things that seem to rise up. And there's something me and Jocelyn do in our business that's really interesting. If we get like 4 or 5 people to call into customer service that there's a problem, right? Then we say to ourselves, you know how like everybody that complains or everybody leaves a negative comment just kills you. It's like, oh, I had 100 people tell me good job today and I had 5 people tell me bad job, and you feel every single one of those things. And I think that's an argument that some people make is, are these things and are these experiences and are these vantage points, are we feeling them, or is there a numerical data-driven justification that things are getting worse? and things are getting better. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And are we comparing apples to apples? Like, getting pulled over is horrific, right? Getting killed is another level of horrific, right? And like, some people I've talked to, we've had a discussion, like, what do numbers say? Like are more people getting killed now than in the past? Are we getting better? One is too many, yes, but like, I guess what I'm trying to say is it really as bad as we think? Like, are the numbers showing that? Are we equivalencing things like getting harassed with getting killed? Like, what's happening there? And I'm saying this out of ignorance, bro. I'm saying this out of me wrestling with information. There's got to be room to wrestle with this, because my context and my experience is so different that I can't possibly put myself in your shoes. I can only empathize, and I can only wrestle with it, Mm-hmm. So what do you think about that when you see things like, the numbers of police go down? And while the numbers are more black people are getting killed by police, there are a lot of white people being killed by police, but the numbers go down over time. And like, how do you reconcile that against your feelings? Like, how do you weigh the reason versus the feelings? Like, do you dive into this stuff, or is it just too raw, or
no?
Or like, what do you think about that?
No, this is our reality.
Mm-hmm.
So, to steal Will Smith's quote, he said, "Racism is not getting worse; it's getting filmed." Right. So we can talk about data for a minute. And the truth of the matter is, you have to look at, okay, there's data saying that there are white people getting fatally killed at the hands of police officer at a similar clip to African Americans. But then, because we're going back to systems, you got to ask yourself, how is the data being reported? Because prior to the filmings, prior to the social media age, police officers can skew the reports how they see fit. So when my parents had conversations with me, and when my friends' parents had conversations with them, the discussion was not only how to interact with the police if you get pulled over, how to be respectful, they protect and serve. Not only was it, hey, be careful what you say to the police, because things can go bad. So not only were people, and I don't want to assume, I'll let you speak to it, but in our context, not only were people losing their lives unjustly at the hands of police, people were also being falsely imprisoned at the hands of police. It's a real thing that people went to jail, and that people are in jail today for, one, crimes that they did not commit.
Sure.
For two, for sentences that data shows, similar crimes amongst races, that the sentencing was unjust. You can look at the data that talks about, and we can go back to the war on drugs. And one thing I want people to not walk away from this is a political debate. This is not a political debate, because this crap has gone on when Republicans are in office. This crap has gone on when Democrats have been in office, right? I don't care
yeah. And
what your
also
political affiliation is.
Yeah.
But the war on drugs, the biggest thing that happened to our detriment in my upbringing was the war on drugs and mass incarceration. The war on drugs came into effect underneath President Ronald Reagan, Republican. But mass incarceration, all the bills that led to that, and the 3 strikes rule came into play under the Clinton administration. And so people were being arrested and falsely accused. People were being arrested for maybe things that they did do, but their sentencing compared to a white person with the same crime was skewed. Yeah. And so you could be, going back to the question that you originally asked just there, you could be fatally wounded at the hands of the police officer, and the police officer can say, without being redirected, without accountability, that you were resisting arrest.
Right.
Because think about it. These
and
are
then you're saying then it gets charted differently, right?
Yeah, these are the narratives that they're still using, even with stuff on film. So you can only imagine how often it was used when there was no video footage.
Sure.
So then they could justify and code it different and thus affect the data. And that's still happening.
I used to do a exercise with my history class. You talk about it's always been here. Like I would show them clips or pictures and be like, all right, did that happen in 1920 or did that happen in 1990? Like you show the picture in black and white because you can go back and see the politicians saying the same thing. Everybody's saying the same thing. You know what I mean? And it kind of lasts that. And that actually was kind of the root of my question because, you know, people love to go to numbers and they love to go to data. And we can argue on what data is right and what data is wrong. But I was kind of saying, like, do we separate those two issues and deal with them? It's so hard to deal with a huge systematic change, right? And if we look back from my perspective, and I think from any perspective, you know, President Obama just the other day was like, I looked at the protests and there were a bunch of white people with them. And that wasn't the same as in the 60s, you know? And we can go back even farther than that and see, you know, even less progress, like it's all terrible. And I'm wondering if the reckoning that's happening now is if you could separate the data from the killings, right? And we fix that. And then, because there's a lot of good ideas on the table that I've been reading lately, like things that they are studying about the system that could eliminate some of these killings, right? But the problem is, I think people take the killing issue and they try to lump it all together with the horrible injustice of the sentencing issue, right? And people get fatigued trying to deal with too much at once. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And like that's I think where the data people start making they start making arguments back and forth, and you're fighting over whose numbers are right, and like, but really it's the issue. Like this is an issue. People are getting killed, but this is also an issue. People are getting sentenced, and this is also also this is another issue to be able to stop anybody you want just because you have probable cause, right? Like these are all separate issues, and it's so complex, dude, and the numbers are confusing, and like, how can we possibly fix everything at once, right? You know, and I think that's where we get this pent up aggression, and you have cops and people fighting and protests that start peacefully. You have a couple people that go bad. You know what I mean? Like, it's just overwhelming. It's really, really overwhelming. And you don't know what side you don't know what, see, like me and you are like, how do we even know how many people are killed? How do we even know this? How do we even know that? How can we possibly, I think that's where the paralysis between white and black people in this discussion come into play a lot, man. You know, does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the thing that we need to do is ask ourselves, what can we do? Clearly, none of us, black or white, can do everything, but all of us, black and white, can do something. Mm-hmm. And you know, to go back to a point you just made. It has taken white and black people working together the entire time. So even in the civil rights era, there were white people along with African Americans. Maybe we don't have the footage access to like we do now. Go back to the slavery, the abolitionists, white people, along with black people, were working together to make progress happen. So we have burdens. Everybody that saw that footage, or everybody that saw the situation with Ahmaud Arbery that's on trial. The pre-trial is going on right now. Yeah. The funeral, one of the memorial services for George Floyd happened today. So the question isn't, oh, look at all these things. I can't fix all these things. The question we have to ask within ourselves is, what can I do?
Yeah.
What sphere of influence can I use to bring about change?
Yeah.
It can be the question you need to ask yourselves, are you even doing the smallest, easiest thing that you can do? What's that, Talaat? What did your dad do to you, Shane? He said, you know what?
Yeah.
That word that people used, that's not how it should be done. what happened there was wrong.
Yeah.
And you say why it was wrong. And you say, in this family, we don't do that. Because, and the reason this is not a political issue, this is a basic human rights issue. Mm-hmm. We were all born into a world with purpose. God made Shane white. God made Talaat black with a purpose. Mm-hmm. He didn't make all of us white. He didn't make us all black. He didn't make us all Hispanic. He didn't make us all Asian, and on and on and on. He created diversity. What he didn't create was one race of people to lord over another race of people. He created everybody since before time began with a purpose.
Yeah.
And so if we, those of us who are faith-based, see oppression in any form, it is our duty to either say something about it, do something about it. So Talaat, can't fix the entire broken different lanes of racism because it's bigger than just police brutality. We have economic oppression.
Yeah, there's so much.
We have situations where home ownership is a struggle. We have situations where banking is a struggle. We have situations where occupational hierarchy is a struggle, and on poverty is a struggle, and on and on and on.
Oh yeah.
So
the median income of this county is $24,000.
There you go.
You know, I mean,
it's different in different places.
How's
so
a family of four going to live?
Right? You got to ask yourself, what can I do? Yeah. Instead of saying I can't fix everything, you should say, but what can I do? What is the something that I can do?
Ooh, I got a good rabbit hole for us to go down.
Right, let's go.
Okay, so this is a very interesting springboard into this next question. We kind of text back and forth today. Okay, so like you and I both have personally seen people destroyed for not saying anything or saying the wrong thing recently. We've seen this. We've talked about it. We've texted back and forth about it. And that, I think, is at odds with something you just said. Like, yeah, I do want to do something in my family. I do want to do something. I mean, with my platform, I've been given a platform, and you've been given a platform. Me and you talked about that, right? And some people, saying the wrong thing is probably not the right context, but I've seen a lot of people getting a lot of heat for trying to stay focused, trying to stay in their lane, trying not to step out and make a big statement. And then when they do make the statement, it's not enough. And then we get harassed and commented and just like some horrific, cancel culture stuff that's also a part of all this narrative, right? And as a white person, I'll be honest with you, it was really difficult for me to figure out how to handle this because I have a lot of black community members that are in my community. I have African Americans that listen to my podcast, and then I see some more aggressive elements of the movement take people out, and they go after it, and people have to cancel their Twitter accounts and give up control of their business. And maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. I don't know. I'm not going to say every single person didn't deserve it or did deserve it, right? Mm-hmm. But it's hard, man. It's hard when I hear on one side be like, hey, what can you do? And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm teaching my kids. I'm raising my kids right. You know what I mean? I'm working to build relationships with people of color. I mean, me and you are friends. And we've never even been in the same place at the same time. We've worked on building a friendship because we admire each other from afar, right? The first time I ever found you in Thai, I said, Jocelyn, look, we're the white version of them. Look, it's us. It's a family helping other families, man. You know what I mean? Like, we've talked about these things, right? But man, it becomes very hard. And I totally empathize and understand with people who don't want to say anything when it feels like there are people waiting, and no matter what they say, it's not good enough. And no matter what they say, it's wrong. And you didn't say enough. You didn't say it fast enough, bro. It's really, really difficult. And that's what kind of suppresses our side of support. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So where do you feel like this cancel culture is hurting the movement, right? And like, I literally lost someone lose their business today, basically. And like how does, and it was for something that was probably tone deaf, but not malicious, you know? Mm-hmm. How do we overcome that? Like what role does that play in all of this? Because we should say something, but like, I got an analogy the best way I can explain what my thought process is. So my brother had a son, and he was born with a major heart defect. Like he was dying on the table and had heart surgery like the second, third day of his life. His artery and his pulmonary artery and his aorta were in the wrong place. Okay, so they had to go in and cut that off and switch it back. And that little boy is a miracle, and he has survived to today. And you know, my brother and his wife are very into the heart community. You know what I'm saying? They asked me one time, dude, help us with the heart community. Kids are dying. We need to do this. When we became successful. And I had to evaluate other causes that we supported. I have limited resources and time just like everybody else. And I know this issue is major, but like some people have other missions that are also major. And then then on top of that, you've got cancel culture waiting in the wings. Not you. I'm saying people on the fringes that are waiting to do that to people. Like, so how do we overcome that? Like, so people can speak out, or they can feel like they have enough time to process this with the context of their life. Like, how do we, and I'm not saying you know the answer, I'm just, what do you think about that, you know?
No, I believe that the answer is empathy. Again, like I said earlier, when we see these situations, we're sitting in the seat of the person. And so it feels like it's us. And so when we see a message, one thing about, and of course I can't speak for every African American in the whole country, right? But one thing in general about African Americans is we are asking just for authenticity.
Okay.
So maybe in the heat of the moment, the video first came out, you're processing, and sitting in your seat, you're processing, man, what should I say? How should I address this? Totally fine. But after you take the time to gather your thoughts, to process what you saw, when you do decide to make a statement, make the statement empathetically, meaning that you're making the statement with the people that you're talking to in mind. Because we are really good at recognizing authenticity and inauthenticity.
Yeah.
Give you a perfect example, a personal example. We got an email from an influencer like you, like I, who emailed us and started the email. At the beginning of the email said, in this crazy world and everything that's going on, this is not a direct quote, but this is a summary. You know, she said, or he said, or they said, I don't want to be tone deaf and I don't want to be insensitive. That was in like the first 3 or 4 sentences of the message. But the message ended with, but I have chosen to still be business as usual. And I'm coming out with this new product, and I would love for you to let your audience know about it. So you started the message to me and my wife, and you know that we're African American, by saying, I don't want to be tone deaf and insensitive. And then in the same email, you were tone deaf and insensitive. So the picture is, I'm being inauthentic right now.
Yeah.
And that's when the anger that was already bubbling just from what's going on in the world comes out. So it's not so much of, hey, white person, white influencer, you need to hurry up and say something about this. No.
Yeah.
You can do what you want. But if you choose to make a message, you need to be empathetic and you need to be authentic. I don't care when you said the message. The only problem is,
but some people do, brother. Some people do.
But you can't.
You know what I mean?
We can't make decisions off extremists on either side of the aisle, because there are people on both sides that are extreme in how they want to get change to happen. Right?
They're looking for the moment, you know, right. And that's what scares people.
But I don't worry about those people don't, and you shouldn't be, because I'm telling you, if you're authentic in how you deliver it, and you are, when you talk to me about it, and other people that not African Americans talk to me about it, I can tell who's authentic and who's not.
Yeah.
And when you're authentic, even if you don't have the answer, even if you don't have the right words, your authenticity comes through, and we can meet in the middle somewhere to figure this thing out. But we are also very good at knowing when you're pandering, when you really don't believe what you're saying, when you're just saying it, one, because it's the trendy thing to do, or two, because there has been social pressure, not necessarily extremists forcing you, but you see people, your peers, making statements. So you feel like, hey, maybe I should make a statement too, just so I don't get in trouble and blah, blah, blah. We can see that. And that's,
do you think everybody has to make a statement? Do you think everybody has to make a statement?
I don't think everybody has to.
I mean, is it like,
yeah. I think
no, and that's another thing. Like I've gotten message from people. I got some emails that were like, you know, it was legit feeling like, when are you going to make a statement? You know what I mean? It wasn't like, hey, what do you think? Let's be authentic. Let's do that. Right. And because I had posted, the one thing I did post, I saw one of those posts by a white guy influencer that felt so forced and so fake. And I didn't want to be that guy, Talaat. You know what I mean? And because I was still wrestling with it all. I'm still wrestling. And it was the week that Elon Musk launched his rocket to the space station.
Yeah.
And I just was, that day, it just really overwhelmed me. I was wrestling with, you know, the day before, a couple of days before, I see this white guy kill this black guy. And then next night, I see places where I had actually been, like in New York and Chicago. And like, I saw these places burning. But right after, I saw these amazing peaceful protests where nobody was doing anything wrong. And then I see this rocket go to the moon. Or not the moon, but the space station or whatever, and I was just so lost in between the capacity of humans for, on one side, for ignorance and evil and chaos, and then in the middle you have unity and people struggling together, and then on the other side you see this brilliance and goodness and collaboration that did this amazing thing from a private company. I mean, a businessman like me and you launched people into the moon or into the space, right? And like, I kind of commented on that, right? And at the same time, I had someone reach out to me and was basically like, yeah, but when are you gonna say something? I saw your comment, but when are you gonna say something? I'm like, man, I'm just saying, I said something, right? But I think that's what was hard. Like for some people, like you posted something the other day, like silent, don't be compliant with your silence or something, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's hard because when I see another white guy get cancel cultured and lose his business, I see my livelihood lost. I see me doing something wrong, and I see me, and that's where I think that's where the hesitation comes from in some of that. You know what I'm saying? And I don't feel like either side is giving enough grace. That's where I'm struggling with right now, is just where's the grace? And that's why I love you so much, because I reached out to you and you were like, and I'm like, man, I'm going to be ignorant. I'm probably going to say something stupid. Somebody's going to yell at me in the comments, but we got to talk. And I needed someone that would show me some grace a little bit, right? So where do you, like, just to wrap up the cancel culture type stuff, like, is it important that we do make public statements, but maybe not required right away, or not required in the end for everybody? Like, can some people have some causes and some people have others? Is that okay? Right? Like, I think that's what a lot of white people would probably ask right now if they could, you know?
Yeah. So I think that it's important for people of influence to use their influence to bring about positive change. Right now, we're talking about positive change in the form of racial justice. And it kind of ties back to what you said earlier. I can't fix everything, and it gets fatiguing. Mm-hmm. This is an opportunity for you to play a small part in change. And it's a layup. It doesn't mean that you have to have a press release because you have a business about how you feel. It can be two sentences.
What would you what would I say? What would I say? Because I was actually reading some Facebook comments, and I really want your perspective on this. I'm not trying to argue what should or shouldn't be done because I don't know. But like, what happens when the mob shows up and that's not good enough? You know what I mean? And it could, like, what happens when you have that really mad person that says it's not far enough? Because this is happening, and so I was looking at a guy today's post, and he has over 600 comments. And it all started, like, he tried to do something. He even had a conversation like we're having, you know? Mm-hmm. And, man, it went off the rails really quick because one person threw the match in. You know what I mean? And then a couple other people spirited. And then they start fighting who that was good enough, that wasn't good enough, white people, black people. You know what I'm saying? Like, is it okay to just say, I'm just going to have to roll through that? Or, like, what do we do? You know, is there a responsibility at the same time for black people to step up in that situation to be like, that was pretty authentic. Like, can we let that process more and see what comes next?
I would say that to answer your first question, I think that if you have influence, you should use your influence for the greater good. And so in a situation of, well, what should I say? Again, you just have to be empathetic. We are not looking for the most part, if I'm coming to you and you teach membership, how to start membership businesses, right? So I'm not looking to you to have data and stats and and this is, what we're looking for is for you to acknowledge that we're here. Yeah. Acknowledge that we have been up against this stuff for a long time. Acknowledge that what you saw was horrendous and shouldn't be. We are looking for acknowledgement because for so long we have gone unacknowledged. Right. And so this is an opportunity to do something new and do something different because you teach, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of people how to create businesses on the internet. Yeah. Right. So we have access to platforms to influence that doesn't even require a physical building. We can hit a few buttons and articulate something to thousands of people with the click of a button. So we have an opportunity to do something that the last generation didn't have. So we have to recognize that this is an opportunity. This is not a obstacle. This is not a stumbling block. This is an opportunity for those who genuinely asked, what can I do? How can I affect change? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a politician. I'm just a blogger. I'm just a teacher. I'm just a mailman. I'm just an administrative assistant. But I don't care what title you have influence. We all do in 2020. We all have a realm of influence where we can say, what I just saw on that video was horrific. And no human being should have to have an officer's knee on their neck and have to scream out for their mama right before they die. You don't need a PR rep to come up with that. You don't need a social media manager to help you figure that out. You just need a heart. And if you do that, if you do it authentically, again, none of us can please everybody. That is impossible, and that is not the goal. All you need to do is to look through the lens of human eyes. And that is something that no human should go through. And say that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and I get that. I don't want to be contrarian here, but I get that. But we both know that it goes beyond that for some people. Yeah. And I think that a term that's really come up lately, there's two terms that really are interesting to me, is an ally. right? Like white allies, black. You want allies in this fight against injustice, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I think when a white person hears an ally,
Mm-hmm.
or a black person hears an ally, it's like a partner in a struggle. Like, right, that's an alliance.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And I really think, because of the culture and because of these tools and because of the way businesses are built and rise and fall in this environment, right, that it's really important from my white perspective that if I'm going to be an ally, I know that this is also, I'm going to have allies in this fight together. We're in this together. It's not just all me. It's not just me making a statement, and it's not just an expectation. It's like, no, man, I've got your back, Talaat.
Mm-hmm.
And this is wrong. And I see what's happened historically. And I know this is a terrible moment. And we got to fix it. I don't want to argue about numbers. We got to fix it. And I'm not going to listen to the fringes who want to dismiss this as business as usual on my side and just keep on going with their whatever. And at the same time, I think it's really important for people of color to say, when you see the elements of that side that are like, no, that's not enough. No, we're going to destroy your business. No, we're going to bring you down. And when we look at comments objectively and we look at comments authentically, I would love for that agreement to be in place. Man, that's what's going to make it happen, because then I know I can say something without the fear of losing my livelihood. And you can say something without the fear of losing your son to police brutality, right? And we know that we can speak out together against all of the injustices that are holding us back, right? I mean, whether it's cancel culture or police brutality or, over incarceration, whatever it is. Like, if we're going to be allies, man, like, we got to be allies. Linked, elbow.
I think
elbow,
that the first step is something like this: acknowledgement, right? I think there's actually 4 steps, and I took some time to think about it. I haven't written nothing down, but I've been thinking about it, and I think that the first step is acknowledgement. But I think that is only the first step. Even I've seen those debates that you're referring to, and I got to tell you, it's being driven by more than just African Americans. Those fires that we spoke about
without
before
question.
we got on. So you're gonna have some people like that. You just are. It's human beings, right? And so I think that after acknowledgement, again, acknowledgement is only the first step. I mean, it's the basic step, saying, yo, that was wrong. That's not how a human being should be treated. I think after you do some acknowledgement, then there has to be a sense of awareness, right? And you have to be careful if you are a white person trying to learn, with a good heart about the depth of the plight of the African American, the black person. So it's okay to reach out if you have African Americans in your world, to say, hey, I really want to understand how to proceed. But you got to be careful, because you are essentially asking that person, as you all walk through the history of things, you're essentially asking that person to relive their trauma. And not everybody is going to be as willing as I am to do so. I feel a responsibility to do so because God has made me a leader in certain ways. And so I feel like I have to rehash this to bring awareness. But everybody's not going to feel that way. And it's not okay to try to put that pressure on someone to educate you on what's wrong. There are good books. There are good documentaries on Netflix. I can give some names of some things. There are some good podcasts that could help you and others who are looking for an understanding of how deep this thing is to gain an awareness. The reason awareness is important is because it helps you to see our reality. I think that if you are in certain situations and certain environments where you weren't exposed to some of the things that we're talking about, it's easy to think that they don't exist because you have not, you have not experienced it, or you have not seen it, or you don't know anybody in your world who has experienced it. But being unexperienced in an area or in a situation does not mean that it doesn't exist. So when we say, when we throw out terms like mass incarceration and how black and brown people are jailed at disproportionate rates compared to white people, it's one thing to say like, nah, come on. No, white people go to jail just like white people. I mean, just like black people, just like brown people.
Yeah.
It's another thing to watch a film like 13th on Netflix that's littered with data, that's littered with research, not skewed research, independent research, to show the facts and the figures that show that mass incarceration actually is a current and real problem. You can do the same thing with economic inequality, with the wealth gap. You'll see, if you do the research, that it's not about people, it's about systems that are in place that keep widening the gap. And so if you take the time to make yourself aware, then you can move into taking action, because people are saying, I don't know what to do. It seems like so much, it seems overwhelming. But if you have information and if you start to consume some of this content, what you'll find is that you will find a place, you will find something that you can do. Even again, if it's relaying the information to the generation behind you.
Yeah.
Even if it's having a discussion on a platform like this, and you seeing that what has happened is still happening. So you go from acknowledging
to awareness.
To awareness. That gives you the ability to take action. Does that mean that you need to go out and march? That would be dope, but you don't have to. That would be dope. But maybe you could donate to a cause that's related to bringing about the change. Maybe you don't have the means to legislate. You don't have the means to fight for new policies, but there are organizations that exist that's their whole effort, 501c3s, and you could donate to those causes.
Yeah.
You could donate to businesses that are African American because of all the obstacles that exist, because you've taken the time to find the awareness, and you see that it's harder to get the same type of funding for a business when you're African American than it is for. So you're like, you know what? I'm going to put some dollars into a business that's founded by an African American. These are small things, right? You can go to Etsy and find an African American owned Etsy store and get an anniversary gift for your spouse next week if you wanted to do little action steps, right? But some people are going to find that they want to push cause. They want to go to their local county or their local town hall. They want to go to the polls and they want to vote for candidates that are a part of being the change and are not trying to push forward the same agendas that have been holding people back. These are all action steps. And the last thing is accountability. Accountability. Now that you are in it, you've made yourself aware, you've participated, you've taken action steps. Now it's important for us to have accountability for the things that the politicians said they were going to do when they got in office. For the way that the police chief said that the policing was going to change. Is the change occurring? And if not, I need to say something about it, or I need to do something about it, or I need to champion the fact that change is what was said, but change accountability. When I vote somebody, and when I vote for a judge, a district attorney, a mayor, a governor, a president, are they aligned with the change that I believe should take place? Because I've taken the time to dig into some of the things that are really wrong with this country. I can't fix everything.
Yeah.
I can't change the whole world, but I have a sphere of influence. When I was in, because we're both former teachers. So when I went back to the high school that I graduated from, that I played football for, and I went there because I said I wanted to be a part of the change that needed to happen, because the school was not the same at the same level it was when I was a student there. So I said, I'm going to be a part of the change. When I got there, there was so much bickering going on at the school board level that had a negative effect on the school administration level, that had a negative effect on at the teacher level. And so I saw very quickly that I couldn't change the whole school. Like I came in there with my cape on and wanted to. So
right,
I said,
I'm here. I've made it.
Yeah,
Everybody, listen.
Since I can't affect the entire school, I decided within myself that I was going to put all that energy into my classroom. And every student that came into my classroom was going to get all of that energy, all of the positive change that I wanted for the student body at large that I couldn't reach because of systems that prevented me. I gave it all to these kids because that was after I did my, due diligence, after I attempted, after I tried and got the pushback. I put all my energy into influencing, using the influence that I did have control over.
The biggest circle you had control.
I put my influence there. Yeah. So whatever sphere you have, and everybody has a sphere of influence. You don't have to have a website to have a sphere of influence.
Yeah,
we all do. People know us and we know people. And we can have conversations. We can challenge people. We can challenge the status quo to try to affect change in our sphere of influence. That's what you can do.
Yeah. I got two hard questions and another good question. Okay. All right. So I want to talk real quick about, and I think it's really important for you to give us some perspective on the destructive elements of the movement, right? Because I am fully aware of, like, we all know that you got to be careful which channel you're watching the news on and what everybody's telling you. And you've really got to see things for yourself and have conversations and talk. And we know that most of this protesting has been extremely constructive and the protesters have been peaceful, right? Mm-hmm. But just like on one side, where we can't have bad apples on one side, how do you feel the looting and the because destroying someone's business, it's not just stealing something, or it's not just breaking something, and it's white people and black people looting. This isn't even really a race thing. It's more like how do you, and does the community around you, is it like, because I've heard everything from, well, the anger is so justified, let them do it, but but then you're taking someone's business and life and savings away, and then some people are like, well, that's not the same people over here, and it's so confused. So where do you come down on that, and what would you say to people about that? Because I think especially in white America, we see the looting and it gets all the coverage. And I'm not in Chicago, man. I'm not in a place that's rioting. I was at the lake Sunday doing the same thing you are. I was so overwhelmed. I needed to go where there was no cell phone service, and I just left. Right. So all I see for a week is burning and destruction, and man, it makes it ruins you on the goodness of what's actually happening and the productive, constructive part of it. So what do you guys what do you think about that? You know what I mean?
For starters, the news is a part of the system, like you stated, right?
Yeah.
So sure. they're gonna like you said, they have the ability to create that narrative. They have the ability to put the cameras and where they want reporters on looting because it's sensational. Yeah. And the majority of the protest, even today, we've had protests still. They're still protesting, but it's peaceful, right? But it's not, it's not going to get the same amount of coverage. We're still going to talk about something else that's more salacious. Yeah. So, but I personally posted that protesting is cool. I'm not for the looting. Yeah. Personally posted that for anybody to see. I would prefer for you to do the peaceful protest and not loot. But
I think too.
I
can understand exactly the anger. I get it for sure. Mm-hmm. I get it. I understand just like you do. I understand it, but it still sucks because it ruins the movement. You know what I mean?
I would prefer it to not get to the point of looting and rioting, but it is a indication of a generation that's fed up. I had a conversation with my mom yesterday. She was here. She's been in Chicago probably since the 50s. She's originally from Mississippi and lived through Jim Crow in Mississippi. And as soon as she could, she left Mississippi and came up here to Chicago. She said she hasn't seen this what's going on here in Chicago since Martin Luther King was killed.
Mm-hmm.
She said this is exactly what happened because Martin Luther King, as you know, as a history teacher, he was on his way here to Chicago. He was in Memphis to do some work, and his next stop was Chicago for the Poor People's Campaign. And Chicago lost it. It looked just like this. She said there have been uprisings, there have been marches and things like that, but the way that the explosion of anger that took place, that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a people fed up. I mean, fed up. And there was an explosion. I'm not with it. I'm not a fan of it.
And you can understand the cause of it. I get it for sure. Yeah.
So no, we prefer I'm just speaking for me. I would prefer the not of the looting because then we got to go clean it up. Then we have to. Are those people ever going to be able to be in business again? I'm not a fan of it, but like you said, we get it.
Well, I think that's something that not a lot of people do in these kind of discussions. Is like you just want to state your opinion of something, and you don't want to understand where it comes from. And until you ask why are people looting? Are some people looting because they're bad? Yes. Or some people taking advantage of the situation. There's some bad things,
and again, that's where they're going to put there. We personally have people in our world who lost businesses, family businesses that were multi-generational that won't recover.
Yeah.
Right. It's personal. Like it hurts to think that this family, this legacy was just destroyed in the midst of this uprising. I'm talking about multi-generational that we know personally. It hurt to see like that. They got them too. Multiple people that lost that are African American, that are in our world, personal world, not social media influence, but are personal that we know and love.
Just friends,
church, just lost their businesses, just like that. So we get it. We get it.
It's amazing how much when you actually talk, like it's unbelievable. It always strikes me as amazing because I've always been a student of history and politics, and that's why I went into teaching in the first place. And it's just ridiculous how much you actually agree on. Not that you understand everything, and not that you have to agree on everything, but we all agree that that shouldn't have happened, right? With a cop killing someone, we all agree that we can make change if we speak up together. You know what I mean? In our own way, and we all agree. Like even like the destructive elements, like we like civil disobedience. That's how Americans do it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just ridiculous how many things are actually commonality, but you don't see it if you're not paying attention, if you're not having the conversation, if you're just making
statements. It starts with acknowledgement. It starts with acknowledgement. You got to acknowledge that something is wrong. Like this isn't a one-off. Something in our country is wrong. There are systems in our country that are broken. And we have the opportunity like never before. I'm serious, Shane. This is an opportunity like never before.
Different. It's different.
That we can, black, white, brown, Asian, whatever color, whatever race, whatever nationality, whatever. We have the power. Okay, think about this for 1 second. What if there was no video?
Oh yeah, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be.
Social media forced us to get this far in the case. Now we've gotten this far in the case before.
The civil rights movement was successful because of television. You could see it.
It was because the tipping point for the civil rights movement was the photograph. The mother of Emmett Till published the open casket photograph of Emmett Till for the world to see, and it couldn't be ignored. So again, it's bringing awareness. That's why it's important. Go back to the question you said before, should people say something? That's the only way change occurs is when people say something. When people say this is wrong, that is where change comes in, is when we say this is not okay.
So if you look at it, and this is something this is the last deep question. Then I got a couple of more personal stuff, because I think at first glance I'm a white guy from Kentucky and you're a black guy from Chicago, but we both know that we're Christians. Mm-hmm. We both know that we're husbands. We both know that we're fathers, right? And I wonder. I was wondering what you said to your kids about this, because that's a really interesting thing. My daughter Anna Jo, she's a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girl. You know what I mean? That lives in the middle of Kentucky, where there's not a ton of diversity, but it's a different world. There's different things happening. And she walked in the other day, and I was watching the news, and a truck was on fire, and she just was like crying, and I was like. And she's like, is there going to be a war? That's what she said to me, my 9-year-old. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And, and my son, he's got social media. He's got TikTok, and he's playing games online. And like some of the games people post, like Black Lives Matter. And he's caught glimpses of these videos and things like that. Right. So, I've had to have conversations from my experience and my God-given path in trying to navigate them through that. And I tell those things like, this is what happened. It's because, of this and that, what you're seeing on TV, like, is because of this. These are really, really hard, difficult things. And like, my perspective is, I'm telling him, we can never be that person that had that boot on that neck. Right. Like, that's not, but that guy doesn't get there from day one. He got there from using this word that we shouldn't use. He got there from experiences and that were unchecked, like write-ups and things like that. So like, that's the context I'm trying to teach my kids to. But what do you say to your kids? Like, what does that look like? Like, that's the conversation I'm having, is how we can not be that person, and we can not, at least not be a part of the problem. And here's what we can probably do to make it better. You know what I'm saying? We can have relationships. We can have conversations. We can have friends. And I tell my kids all the time, you are not going to school around here. You're going to get out there where you meet other people and you see that there's different people, right? But like, what's the conversation you've had? How do you explain this? Because your kids are, how old are they?
10, 8, 6.
Yeah, we're the same age. I got an 11 and a 9-year-old. You know what I mean? We're right in the same world. Like how are you explaining what's on the news? Are you explaining it? Are you talking to them about it? Like, what does that look like in a black family, basically?
So it looks completely different, right?
Yeah.
So our son actually woke up in the middle of the night with a nightmare, and he's 10. He's not no little baby. He's a fully active, tough little 10-year-old, and he had a nightmare about looting in his dreams and the riots in his dreams. And I was oblivious to it, but my wife had to nurture him in that moment. And we've been talking about how we're going to have to talk to our kids. And see, here's the difference with what you're going to have to tell your kids and what I'm going to have to tell my kids. And I said this on another video with Ty when we were together, Ty and I. And this is a cold, hard truth for everybody listening that's not African American. My wife and I have to prepare our kids to be discriminated against.
Yeah.
We have to educate them that people are, not maybe, people are going to look at them differently at some point about something 100% based on the fact that they are African American. I have to educate my children the same way, and that's the disappointing part. Is that the same way my parents had to educate me on being careful around the police, I have to now have that same talk with our kids. Yeah. That it can go really bad really quickly. I was trained when I'm pulled over by the police, put my hands on the dash, put my ID, hurry up and get the ID, get the insurance out, because you can't have no hand movements when they walk up to the car, because it could go bad. Everybody don't have to have that conversation with their kids. but
Yeah.
we do. I have to educate my kids that, because they are the minority in their schools. And at some point, it's going to show. We had to have a talk with our school's administration because the school doesn't celebrate or doesn't incorporate Black history, or didn't, I should say, in the school curriculum. And they had this 1 week, you know how you have Spirit Week and stuff like that. And so they had Spirit Week, and on the last day, they called it Ugly Hair Day. But the depiction was of a darker skinned girl with pigtails. And so when my daughters walked up to my wife showing them the paper that showed it, both of my daughters had pigtails. And their skin, obviously, is darker. And the name of that day was Crazy Hair Day.
Yeah.
So now we have to have that conversation that there's nothing wrong with your hair. Your hair is not crazy. Your hair is beautiful. You are beautiful. And so these, unfortunately, are a series of conversations that we're going to have to continue to have, especially as they get older, because chances are my son's going to be just as big or bigger as I am.
Sure.
And he's going to have to be careful. Like, my wife gets nervous about me going for a run in our neighborhood. Like, a genuine nerve. Like, tries really hard to talk me out. I don't want you to. Why? Because there are systems that make me out to be. It's not about the fact that I got 3 college degrees. It's not about the fact that I got this big influential platform. It's not the fact that I'm a pastor.
Yeah.
When I'm out there, I'm a big Black man running through a not Black neighborhood. And that could pose danger to me.
Yeah.
And that's a reality. That's not an imagination.
Yeah.
It's a reality. And
so, what did you say to your son about the nightmare when you found out about it? Like,
my
about
wife
the
just
riots?
nurtured them. I mean, we can be honest with our son because my son is a thinker. And so
and you got to be straightforward with a kid that age. They can smell through your bull crap.
And so he knows that we haven't had. I mean, we're gonna have some super deep talks with all 3 of them soon. But we did just enough to help him understand that what's going on, why it's going on, and why it's wrong. Yeah. The deep conversations about what it all means are coming. But my wife and I are discussing how we want to have it and how deep we want to go. But we're going to have to, because it was at his age that I experienced the cross burning.
Yeah. Right.
And I said this on another video. I was like, man, I was really hoping that I would be ushering our children into a world that looked a little bit different than the one I was ushered into. And unfortunately, I'm not. I'm going to have the same conversations that were had with me.
Like, there's a Mark Twain quote that says, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes." Right? And really deep quote. And as I look at history, I think this is definitely going to be maybe a place where we have a different perspective a little bit. But and this is again me coming from my background. But what I see as a student of history is progress. It's not what we want. Definitely, it's not even close to what we want. I'm not saying that, but literally, 100 and something years ago, there were slaves, right? And then there was a movement, and there was not slaves. Then there was Jim Crow, and there was not Jim Crow. And then there were civil rights, like that at least gave us some kind of functional structure to resist. And then there were programs that we've tried, like affirmative action and like things like that. And the same thing, like you experienced this cross burning back in the 90s, and back in the 80s or 70s, there was still this place with this horrible name, but that name has changed now, right? And I don't know, maybe you haven't seen a cross burning since. Maybe there's less of them. I don't know that for sure, right? But that did happen in the past. And I think that there is something different happening right now. I don't know what it is, but it feels different, and I can see at least where slowly, brick by brick, it's stacking towards something better. You know what I mean? And I do have some kind of hope that we have come a way, whether it's a long way or a short way or not enough way, that's up for debate. You know what I mean? And on my side of the equation, I might look and go, wow, that's come a long way. On your side of the equation, you'd be like, nah, man, I was face down at 17. You know, like there's a different experience there, of course, right? But there has been progress. Mm-hmm. And I think we can make progress. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I hope that our sons, Isaac, what's your son's name? Your oldest?
Emmanuel.
I hope that my 11-year-old son and your 10-year-old son, Isaac and Emmanuel, will not have to sit down on YouTube and have a conversation like this. You know what I mean? Like, I think we're at least at the place where on the horizon we see something can be very different, even if we don't know how to get there right now, you know? And that's kind of why I really wanted to have this conversation tonight, man, because there's a lot wrong, but there's some right. You know what I mean? I mean, there is some right. And if we can find more, and then we can tell our kids to find more right and don't be ignorant like us and, you know, like, and the people before us and even more ignorant than the people that were behind us. Like, man, maybe there's something that can happen different this time. You know what I mean? And,
but I think that's
do
why.
Do you feel hopeful? You know what I mean?
I feel hopeful. And I think that's why the conversations, that's why the work has to continue. Because, I mean, my mom, you know, wouldn't have been able to have a conversation like this in Jim Crow, Mississippi on a stage with a white person, right? That we're having right now. So, there's progress. But look about it. The reason the fight is important, especially for our sons, like you mentioned, is because just because there has been progress in cancer treatments doesn't mean that we stop trying to find a cure for cancer.
For sure.
So there are still people who are just going to get diagnosed tomorrow, unfortunately, with cancer. And they're hoping not just for a prolonged life, a staving off of the cancer for a little while. They're hoping that somebody continues to work to find the cure that can restore their life. So yes, there has been progress, but there's still a disease in our country called racism that we have to work to completely try. We have to work. Again, like you said, it might not happen with us. Maybe it'll happen with our kids. But we have to work to find the cure, not just a drug that will stave it off for a little while. It's important for us to have conversations like this and conversations in our homes and conversations at our school boards and conversations at our election polls, because we want to find the cure. That's got to be the goal in my estimation. And that's my hope.
And our you said something there very interesting, like, and this might be a good, we've been rolling, man. We might just talk till midnight if we keep going. You know what I mean? But like, you know, you said like our country, you know what I mean? And I, you know, I'm going to get a little poetic here. I might go back to my master's thesis or whatever, but it is supposed to be our country, like a more perfect union. And, you know, it is supposed to get better. Like, that's what we're supposed to do to it. And like, we have to figure out it's kind of like being on, you know, like, well, this is a whole other controversial issue that we could get mad about, but like, or go talk about, like, you know, people get mad about the flag and they get mad about kneeling, and like, I believe in protest. I believe, you know, some people, I think it's silly to get mad at somebody to protest in that way. I think that is silly because everyone that brought more attention probably to this than anything ever had. That's the point. Like, you do something traumatic to cause right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, what I reject is a rejection of the idea of this system. Like, this system, like, honestly, you really probably wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world than here. You know, like, me and you built online businesses and communities and paid off houses in America. Like, those are things that might probably not be possible anywhere else on earth right now. Mm-hmm. You know, for anybody, let alone. And these things that exist, we're wearing the same jersey, right? And like the problem is when people want to throw the jersey away, or they want to, no man, just get a cooler jersey. Like nobody throws the school colors away. You just get a cooler jersey, right? Every year, like that's what happens at the school. So like I think that's really important. What you said there was like, it is our country. It's your country. It's my country, and it's our kids' country. And we're trying to build this thing to be better for them. So if we can stay on the same team, and if we can truly get each other's backs, and I can reach out and say something and help you and the people that are the same skin color as you, and you can reach back and say, man, I'm going to help you and the people that are the same color as you. And I think even though we have these conversations about race with our kids, I tell my son all the time, man, not everyone is like that. Not everyone is like that. Not everyone just hates each other or hates somebody or is this, that, or the other. And if you just got to get enough of us that are not like that the other people can't resist it, then we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
We're going to be all right. And you don't have to get canceled, and you don't have to get killed. You don't have to get pushed against, and it goes away eventually, Yeah,
it's important that we have those conversations. We have balanced conversations. One of the things we tell our kids, race or no race, if you see wrong, we tell them, if you see wrong, if you see bullying, if you see somebody doing the wrong thing, you stand up for the right thing. You stand up for the right thing, because the Bible talks about when Jesus was asked what the greatest commandment was, he told him it was love. It was love. And so for everybody who is trying to figure out how to navigate this situation, these situations, you navigate it through the lens of love. You won't have to worry about a business being lost, or by people saying bad things about you, if you're leading with love. Lead with love.
Yeah, man.
And if those negative people come around, the Bible talks about addressing evil with, guess what? Love. Because at the end of the day,
do not fight evil with evil. Fight evil with good. Romans 12, baby.
If you're rooted in your faith, God's going to have your back. It can go really bad. Not to say that you're invincible, but man, God is going to be with you. God is going to be with you. Black or white, lead with love. And love will not allow you to do things that are oppressive to other people. So come back to love to find solution. Come back to love to find your answer of how to handle this. Come back to love to figure out, how can I use my influence for the greater good? This feels too overwhelming. Come back to love. That would be my admonishment.
Listen, brother, I hope that when me and you see each other on the other side, that Jesus lets us sit next to each other in the choir.
That'll be dope.
You know what I'm saying, man? We'll sing it loud, baby. But let's I tell you what, man. Let's do this. I know there's still a lot of people watching, and I forgot we were even on this thing live. I thought we were just talking. But I just want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you for setting it up too. And for hosting all the tech and doing all that stuff. And why don't close us in prayer?
Absolutely.
Let's pray about it, and then we'll jet, man. It'll be good, okay?
Absolutely. So Heavenly Father, we honor you in this moment, even in this season that is tough. It's been full of adversity, full of questions, Father, and we're all trying to figure out, how do we find a way forward? We are in the midst of an imperfect situation, but we serve a perfect God. So we're asking for you to lead us in the direction that we should go. Help all of us, Father, find common ground. Help us to eradicate the sin of racism. Help us to eradicate the divisive spirit that is permeating throughout the land. And help us to come on one accord, to be led and to operate, to live through the lens of love. Help us to walk out love. Help us to talk love. Help us to act in love. Help us to hear others through ears of love. Father God, we surrender this entire pandemic, this entire topic of racial injustice. We cast it at your feet. We ask for your help in this moment. And we honor you, knowing that you do have this in mind, and it is on your heart, and it is in your word. Help us to look at your word, take it, and live it. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
I love you, Talaat McNeely.
Love you back, sir.
Love, man. Good job, dude.
We hope
awesome.
that everybody appreciated this
buddy.
honest conversation between Shane and I. And we are also hoping that you, in turn, have conversations in your world to use your sphere of influence to bring about change. We all have a part to play. Let's all try. Let's all try to play a part. All right, guys. Good night.